A big hello to everyone that has joined us today. My name is Andrew Gallagher and welcome along to the Power Platform webinar. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and will be available after the event on the User Group YouTube channel. If you don't want to be recorded, you need to drop off the webinar now. Today's webinar is proudly presented by the Power Platform Community User Group. We have partnered with Microsoft to create this group as we are passionate about the Power Platform and are keen to increase and share our knowledge while keeping up to date with all the latest information. I feel the user group is the perfect platform to achieve these goals, and I encourage you to join the group and participate in the conversations. For any questions or follow-up after the webinar, please post them into the user group discussion forum. Today's agenda consists of a quick introduction about our presenters, leading into current news from the user group. Then it's on to Robert Crane's presentation using an API to connect to a very special and unique type of data. If time persists, I will take questions from the floor, and please stick around for the virtual cup of tea afterwards. Today's presenters are Bill Mallett, Yeoman and myself, Andrew Gallagher. We also have a special guest today, Robert Crane from CIA Ops, who will join us in the conversations and do the main presentation. We have also done many certifications and are happy to answer any queries that you may have on the certification process. Now I'm going to kick off the Power Platform update. And I'm going to start by discussing that Microsoft are depreciating basic authentication for Exchange Online. Now I'm just going to grab my screen here. Now why this is important, and this is more a Microsoft 365 thing, but it's very important to know that if any of your Power Automate, Power Apps, or even Power BI is referring to an Exchange Online mailbox using basic authentication, you've got about 3 months or 150 days to change that over to use modern authentication. This is because Microsoft is switching it off. They've given plenty of warning over the couple of years. In fact, they delayed switching it off because of COVID. But on the 1st of October, the deadline has been set and it will be switched off, and anything referring to Exchange Online using basic auth will literally stop working. I also wanted to talk about Microsoft Build, which is coming up. This is a great event with lots of sessions covering everything Microsoft 365, but there's also plenty of sessions, as you can see here, where I've done a quick search on Power Apps in regards to the Power Platform. These sessions are run on American times, so for the Australian people out there, it will be late, but all sessions are recorded and can be viewed at your own time. As well as the Microsoft Build, they have, under the Learning Zone, the Microsoft Cloud Skills Challenge. Now, one of the reasons why I like the Skills Challenge, I'm big into certifications. When I talk to people out there, they tell me how expensive a Microsoft certification can be. I sort of deny that theory because Microsoft are really big on having online courses, and if you attend some of those online courses, such as the fundamentals, which I have here, sorry, which screen? Here, if you attend the Microsoft Virtual Days Fundamentals, which is a basic course on the Power Platform, you get the PL 900 exam at cost. This is a great spot to begin in your certification journey. Then back to the Skills Challenge. If you do the skills challenge, which is basically running through a Microsoft Learn on the Microsoft website over a month or so, you then get the option to pick from one of the exams that you can see on the screen here for free. And as you can see, there are 3 Microsoft Power Platforms, and it's the first time we've had such a selection of exams, the PL100, the PL200, and the PL300, to continue that certification experience. And lastly, you can then do a Power Platform workshop in a day. And this goes into a lot more detail and a lot more hands-on experience, where you can write an app in a day in Power Apps, a dashboard a day using Power BI, working with Excel, creating reports, doing Power Automate process automation, or even creating your own bot with Power Virtual Agents in a day. And now I'm going to hand over to Bill, who's going to talk about our community group and any updates.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll just share my screen so that we can see what's actually happening.
Yep.
There's only been a very small change in our membership. It's gone up by a couple, I think, since last time, up to 30 members now. So I encourage everyone to invite people that they know that might be interested to our group. Just to let you know a couple of things that we are doing to help get the message out there and share our good news around and help each other. Now there's 2 links in our details that go to some useful areas. So we've got our community YouTube channel, which we have now started to share not just the our webinars, but also individual videos now from the demonstrations in our webinars, so that you'll be able to refer back to the demonstration that you like or you'll find useful, and come back and watch it again later when you actually want to use it. The other thing you'll notice is a sign up to our mailing list. So that'll take you to a Microsoft form where you can sign up to the mailing list. We plan to start putting a mailing list out soon that just gives a quick update on any of the latest things happening within the group, pointers to things that you may find useful. So that'll be starting up soon, the actual mailing list. So if you want to sign up to it, click on that link and sign up using the form. And I too would like to encourage everyone, Microsoft Build, sign up to it, even if you're not going to do the live events. Most of them have the ability to actually, if you've signed up, create what's called a backpack, which will save away for you in a Word file links to all the recordings, so that you can watch them all later. So sign up, even if you're only going to do that. The other thing is a reminder that every Friday afternoon, except for the Friday of the webinar at 3:30 Eastern Australian time, we have a get together for our group and just discuss things that are going on. And next Friday, 3:30, would be an opportune time to discuss what you've learnt already from Build and what you're excited about, and what might be very useful for yourself or the small businesses that you're associated with. So I really encourage you to attend Build and come to our session next week, and we'll talk all about it together. And so that's the news I have for this month, Andrew. So
thank you, Bill. Now, it's great to see that our user group is slowly increasing in numbers. And it's definitely fantastic that we're now creating some mailing lists and whatever to sort of communicate with those members in a much more fluent and easier way. One last thing that I'm going to show. Now, I've just put some links into the chat on where you can register for Microsoft Build or the Power Platform workshops and exams and the skills challenge. But I also wanted to mention that Microsoft have released a new Power Platform exam which is the PL500. Now, this exam is purely on Power Automate and RPA, which is the automation processes that we do with Power Automate Desktop and the Power Platform. This is a specific exam on all of those features. It is a new exam, so anyone that's sort of looking at it, I recommend that they go to the Microsoft Learn and do some practice exams from the Microsoft website. They're all readily available. Now, for our main presentation, I'd like to introduce Robert Crane from CAA Ops. Robert does an abundance of training around Australia, and I must admit I've learned many things in all Microsoft 365 and Power Platform, Robert. And yeah, I'm proud that we have him on to do a presentation for us today.
There have been good and bad things you've learned, haven't there, Andrew? I would suggest.
The good completely outweigh the bad, Robert. I can assure you of that.
I need to work harder to balance that out. Thank you very much for the kind intro. Welcome everybody to the session. It's always a pleasure to join the progressive few looking to move the industry forward using some of the best tools I think that are available in the Microsoft space. So what I thought that I'd spend a little time showing you is we've talked about, in these presentations about probably, the entry level, the basic approaches to Power Automate, and that's great. We can connect to things in Microsoft 365, email, files, and so on, and manipulate those. But the real power starts to come when you look at moving or working with data and information that is outside that environment. Now, the way that you achieve that is using typically something called an API. It's an application programming interface. So a lot of businesses today do their product or service very well, and they make it available outside the environment programmatically using something called an API. So at its essence, an API is simply a call to a website that will either inject data or return data. Now, the good thing is that Power Automate allows us to manipulate that or work with APIs directly as well. So this is where the real power of it is. So what I've got here is a Microsoft 365 environment. And again, we've gone into our Power Automate. Now, there's a couple of ones here that use APIs, but I'll start off with my favorite here, which is Dilbert. So the name of the flow here will probably give away what this actually is. So what I wanted to do was, back in the day, there was a SharePoint web part that you could plug in to your SharePoint called Daily Dilbert that would display, a Dilbert comic of the day. Really good for adoption to help people want to and start understanding and using Teams. And I wanted to replicate that. So luckily what came across my desk was a Dilbert API. So I'll just show you what it is here. So Dilbert, this is the URL. All right, so let's just see what happens when we run the URL. So if we just run the URL here, what you'll see here is that it's going to basically give us, hopefully, a response here. And the response is going to be, JSON, which is just some files here. So you'll see here, this is the response. So we're getting back this piece of text here. Now, this is formatted as something called JSON, so JavaScript Object Notation. And what it's telling us in essence is here is a URL. So if we go to a URL here that was provided, it's going to give us our Dilbert comic. So if we go and access this API, we will get a link to a comic strip of the day from Dilbert. Now, what we want to do with Power Automate is obviously go out and capture that and then also stick that in Teams. So what I've done here is you'll see that I've created a very simple flow. So in this case, I've triggered it manually, but in other areas, what I've done is set up to be an automated or a scheduled flow. So that will run once a day, 9 o'clock in the morning, so people know regularly to come into Teams. Now, the core of it is the HTTP action. Now, before we get too far, it's important to note that the HTTP action is a premium connector. So you'll need to have a license to allow you to use this premium connector. Would have been nice if it wasn't, but again, just be aware that on some of the basic plans, you may not have the capability for that connector. But also remember that it's only the person who's creating this flow that would need the premium connector. Everybody in your environment doesn't need it because I'm the one creating it, and I'll be pushing the result into a Microsoft team basically for people to view. So really, I would be the only one in the tenant needing that premium connector. Now you'll see here in the action here for HTTP, I do have a number of actions. So the action here with Dilbert is to get. So basically that means I'm going to go and record or basically read the information from the API. But you'll notice that we also have put, post, and so on. So we can actually post information. So that's sending information into the API, which would then take it on board and take some action. So imagine you had an accounting system. You want to push your latest expenses in there. You would use the post action to do that. So here's our URI, which we talked about. You'll need to get that from the provider, whoever that may be. And there are a number of other items in here that you can. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. But because this is a simple read API, all I need to do is get the information. Now, the real challenge when working with APIs is the format that it comes back in. So the format, as you saw, is something called JSON. Now, JSON's good because it is structured. It's like, okay, it's going to be in this sort of format, and we know that. Now, what we need to tell Power Automate here is we need to tell it that format that it's coming back in, because we want to be able to manipulate the fields that have been returned from the API using our dynamic capabilities here. So it'll recognize basically the fields. So this little piece of JSON here is very important because it allows Power Automate to say, okay, when I get stuff back from this API, I can break it out into, as you see here, object and title and image and so on. Now we're going to use the image field at some stage. Now getting that can be a little challenging at times. Normally the API provider will give you this. You can also work it out by looking at the return, and you can also generate it from a sample. So you can run the API once, generate an output, and then Power Automate's generally smart enough to be able to convert that into generic JSON that you can use. But the real challenge has been at times for me is to find, the right JSON here. So that's probably the biggest challenge. But with the Dilbert one, it's pretty straightforward. And then what I've done is once I've got that, I'm going to spit that out into teams. Now you'll see what I've got here is I'm going to use the HTML posting method. So it's going to actually post it as a HTML, so I can embed the image in there. So I don't want to do it as plain text. So hopefully you need to have a little bit of skill with HTML, and you'll see here that I'm just taking the image source, which is the field now, or the variable called image, and that was obtained thanks to the JSON file above. And then I'm just going to format it for width and height, and then spit it out into the team there. So it's nice and easy to do. So a very straightforward way to basically do that. Now, normally this would run on an automated schedule, but what I'm going to do here is just run it manually, just so that we can get a look of it. So you'll see here in a second, if I run the flow, fingers crossed that all works. The demo gods are pleased for the day. You'll see here that it's now running as with any Power Automate. Now we just quickly go in and have a look at the HTTP. You'll see here it's a method, it's a get. We can look at the raw inputs. So if you do have problems with your APIs, you can go in and look at the raw inputs. And if we go down here and look at the raw outputs, you'll see that this was the JSON that came back, right? So that's basically what the API has returned, and then I've been able to pass that with my JSON. So if we go down here and have a look at the JSON, you'll see here that it is worked out that the title is, this, the image is that, and it's now then allowed that to be injected into the action for posting in the team. Now, with all things being equal, if we go to teams in our environment here, demo environment, we should see the same Dilbert comic that we saw displayed when I went to it manually after just typing in the website here. So the idea here is that this is a very simple way to work with an API, to get familiar with it, get it working, provides a bit of fun and games for those in your environment. So again, it's a very simple flow that I would suggest you set up to manually run at a set time per day. Again, to encourage people to come in and start participating inside teams. And once you set it up as an automation, then it can run every day. You don't have to touch it. And again, it's just adding value to your team's environment. So yeah, my machine here seems to be a bit slow. Come on, Teams. Now, the next thing to look at is once we've done this basic stuff, we can now start looking at more sophisticated APIs. So there we go. So there is our Dilbert comic of the day. And you'll see that we get notification that it was posted by the Power Automate capability inside Teams. Now, that's really good because it also lets people know how it actually got there, and they can ask questions, and then we can start extending it from there. Now, that's a very, very basic API. So let's take a step back and, okay, what can we actually start doing with this is a little bit more sophisticated. So what we can do, for example, here is we can use some of the Microsoft APIs to dive into our environment, our Microsoft 365 environment, and pull information that's inside the tenant. So this one here, you'll see here, is a little bit more sophisticated. It's still got the core HTTP request in here. But if we have a look at this, you'll see what it does. It does a get, as we talked about, but it's going to the graph. So Microsoft has its own APIs for its cloud environment, typically from the Microsoft graph. So you'll see I'm going to go to the graph. I'm going to go to the security, and I'm going to go and pull the secure score, right? So I'm going to go and get the secure score for the tenant and display. That's what it does. But because this is a request to private or restricted information, I'm going to have to add some authorization. So luckily, with the Power Automate HTTP action, you'll see down the bottom here, we can actually put in the way that we're going to authenticate. So in this case, we're going to make an Active Directory OAuth call, and we're going to inject some values that we have pre-configured. Now, again, the really good thing about Power Automate here is that I can reach into areas inside Azure. So just a quick thing here is what I've done is I've stored the authentication capabilities inside something called an Azure Key Vault, which is a secure location inside Azure. The great thing is I can still access those programmatically without having to write code. So how I got them in there was to use PowerShell, but how I can actually access them is just to use, again, this get app secret, which is part of the standard Power Automate here. So what I've done is I've gone out and recovered, or basically grabbed, these three items that I need to make a secure request. And you'll see here, one is the tenant ID, one is the client ID, which is an application, and the last one here is basically a password. So I've been able to inject all those. Now, the benefit is that when someone, like a developer, creates this for you, then they're not going to see those secrets, right? So again, they are in the key vault, they are locked down, but the developer can just access this quickly and easily without actually seeing or pulling up those credentials and not writing or embedding static values into their flow. So if they do change or you want to update them over time, you can do that, and you won't have to go and change the Power Automate. The other advantage of putting it in the key vault is that I can put alerts and notifications to make sure that the key vault is not being abused or someone's not extracting information they shouldn't. So once we get that HTTP request to the Microsoft Graph, we've then got to go in, and you'll see here, this is where the real trick of it is you'll see that the JSON here is a lot more sophisticated because what's being returned by that Graph API request is quite a lot of information. So we need to get that right. Generally, that's in the Microsoft documentation, but you can run it manually and work it out. And happy to share that if you do want that. So once we've got that, again, we need to now go in and set some variables here. So I'm going to work out what the current score. I'll extract that from the body after running a JSON pass through it. You'll see that I've got a max score, and then this was a really tricky one I worked out yesterday. When you look at secure score, it's a percentage return. So it's, the current score divided by the max score. Doing that in Power Automate tends to be a little bit tricky. So I did write a blog post on this yesterday, but you'll see here that, looking at the formatting here, I've had to format the number so it's restricted to 2 decimal places. I've had to divide the variables, the current score and the max score. Then I need to multiply it by 100 to get a percentage, and then I need to format it to 2 decimal places. So again, this expression here took me a little while to work out, but that will give me this variable here. Once I've got that variable, then obviously what I'm going to do is just go to Teams, and I'm going to output the result for people to view. So again, I've already done this. So you'll see here, this is the output here. So you'll see it gives me the current score, 379, over the max score, 385, and the percentage is to 2 decimal places. All right. So if we went into security.microsoft.com, looked at secure score, we would see that it would be basically the same here. Now I've run that with, like I said, an API call. Now the final extension I can give you here is what we can do is we can, once we've got our flow, we can now start doing some really interesting things. So what I can do is, I've actually done this here, is to incorporate the same sort of flow into a Power Virtual Agent. So now if I go to my Power Virtual Agent and basically say, look, I want to see a Dilbert comic, fingers crossed that the agent will wake up and it should post the same Dilbert comic. It's just doing exactly the same API request out there to that environment, and then we'll come back and post it in there. So the important thing here is that we can take a very, simplified way of programmatically setting up our environment, and we can then start reaching out to data sources outside the Power Platform using an API. You don't need necessarily to be a developer. It's just a little bit of work to understand, but largely the world is driven by APIs. So if we have a quick look down here, you'll see that I have the same Dilbert comic. So there it is. And this now allows you to not only reach out and extract information from all different data sources, but it also allows you potentially to post and update information as well. All of the authentication can be handled generally in the Power Automate, as you've seen, with this more sophisticated flow here. The real trick, or the real, I suppose, skill is getting this JSON, template here correct. That can take a bit of mucking around, but hopefully that is available to you. Once you've got that, all the fields that come back from this API call will be available to you in Power Automate, and you can then post them in Teams or send emails out or do whatever. So I think that what we'll see going forward is more companies are now realizing that APIs are the way to share and interact between SaaS-based programs, and they're making those available and documenting those. There obviously are a number of ones that are free. So you've got Dilbert, you've got stock market ones, you've got news. There's a lot of APIs that are out there that you can implement or use for free. You can then look at manipulating or working with your own Microsoft 365 environment using the APIs that are available, because you've already got the authentication inside that environment. And then it is possible to use other third parties where you actually do have to authenticate to get the information. So what we expect to see over time is the capability of these APIs to provide even more power to the Power Platform environment. So again, we can use APIs to pull data into things like Power BI, Power Automate, as we've done here. So if you haven't looked at Power BI, if you haven't looked at the APIs at all, then I would suggest go in, have a bit of a play around with it. My advice to you is to have a look at doing the daily Dilbert. Very simple. It's read only. You're not changing any data. You're just displaying something on the screen here. So if we go in once again and have a look at this, you'll see that it's very, very simple. We just need a trigger, which is standard with any Power Automate. And we then just go out and call this URL here, and that will come back with a picture and a little bit of text. We then just convert that into fields and we're good to go. So it's a very simple way to start playing around with APIs. Once you've got that, then I would start looking at some of the APIs that Microsoft does provide that may benefit your environment. So, for example, you can have APIs that look at your mailbox or look at other mailboxes or do something in Teams and basically build from there. So I think in summary, the main point is to appreciate that the Power Platform is fantastic. It does a huge amount of stuff already. A lot of people tend to think of it as limited to the Microsoft 365 environment only inside that tenant. However, with the growth of APIs from third parties, you can now start working with information outside your tenant and bring it inside your environment and provide additional value to that. There's just a whole range of APIs that are possible. So the reality is you can really just about achieve anything, provided the service has an API, because it just makes it so easy, as you've seen here, to do with the Power Platform. The last thing, again, to remember is that the HTTP action is a premium connector, and you'll see here it's got a little diamond here on my flow. So if I go back to my flows here, you'll see that that little diamond indicator indicates obviously that they have a premium connector for which you would need a premium Power Automate license, but you would only need one for the person generally creating that. So again, keep that in mind. That's the only thing that may, again, be a little bit different from your environment. Just make sure you do have that premium connector. All right, well, I think that's probably enough for me for the time being. I will hand back over, I believe, to Andrew. Are there any questions or thoughts on any of that from anybody listening?
Thanks. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. Firstly, the JSON file that you're using there, I must admit, when I sort of started with the JSON, it was a bit daunting, but I did sort of find that it's in like an array format. And from that array format, you can gather details or gather data. If you just want to bring up, if you can bring up the JSON view, you filter through the array down into the data. And when you sort of think of it like that, it does become quite simple, quite simple to follow. A bit like, I don't know if people remember what the old INI files or INI files used to be in Windows. It's a very similar process where each category is in an array, and as you filter down into the array, you then get to the specific data that you're after.
Well, I think it's at the end of the day, JSON is a very standard format, which we see, all over the place. I think the problem is that, again, this JSON here for the secure score, you'll notice, is quite extensive, and that's where it can become a bit daunting. It's like trying to get it right, because if it is slightly wrong, you tend to get all sorts of funnies in there. So my advice would be, as always, is to start with a very simple example where the JSON, you understand, you can see it. So that's why the Dilbert one is, only a couple of fields, you get a feel for it. You're right, JSON is very straightforward and formatted, but I think for someone who hasn't seen it or experienced it, can be a bit daunting if you try and do too much too quickly. So again, as always, work with something fairly simple with a limited subset of inputs. That will make it much easier to say, okay, yeah, this field, that field, this field. But again, just remember, it can get quite sophisticated, as we've got here with Secure Score. But that said, remember that that's also very powerful. So when I make a request to the Microsoft Graph, it spits back, tons and tons of information potentially. As long as I can format that or work out what the fields relate to, then I've got a huge amount of information I can work with. So again, as always, as with anything, start with something simple, get a feel for it, and then grow from there. Don't try and do too much too quickly. And again, that's why the Dilbert option is the best option.
It's a good one to go to. So the Dilbert option didn't have any authentication. You were able just to put the straight URL in and gain that data.
Correct. It's what they call a public API. It's a GET, so it's just reading information. It's not doing that from a secure environment. So that's the easy one to start. No authentication. Very small amount of data that's coming back. Basically, a title and a URL. That's a really good one to obviously start things off, because like I said, there's no cost. There's no, it's not intimidating, I suppose, with the amount of stuff here, well documented. So if we go in here again, just to go back to our friend Dilbert, just to show you. So again, you can go in and take the URL here, right? So this is the API here. It's free. That's all you need to do is put those two options in to get there. And you'll see here, if we look at the JSON, it's very, very straightforward. It's only a couple of lines.
Yep.
So taking that is, the way to go, and then build out from there. But its core, like I said, you could, if you wanted to, if the API supported it, you can get, read, push, update. You can do basically anything. It's just a web request doing it, and doing it in the Power Platform makes it nice and easy, because if you need to, you can go in here and configure all that authentication in a graphical user interface rather than trying to do it on a single line of code. So that's why I think it's a really good thing.
The other thing I was thinking, Rob, is if you are dealing with the new API, it'd be good to create a little Power Automate just like this Dilbert one that just deals with the API, so you can test it out, make sure you understand what you're getting or what you're putting to it first before you go try and plugging it into a much more sophisticated process that you might have in mind for it.
I think the real trick I've found with the Power Automate is, look, it's low code. It's really easy to use. It's dead easy to start. That all sounds good until you actually need to do something a little bit more sophisticated. So the example I provided with that secure score, I actually had to divide and format numbers. Turned out to be much more difficult than I would have thought it would be, because in other programming language you can just do the formatting or restrict the number of decimal places quite easily. But as you saw, when we actually come to do that, it ends up being a division inside a multiplication, inside a formatting. And I think that's, trying to chew off too much too early is where you get really frustrated, and why doesn't this work? So it's really a building process, and you'll be surprised how quickly you pick up that knowledge. But again, it is a different environment to develop with. And that can have its own nuances around things like, well, hang on, this should be easy, but it's not. And again, just starting simple and then building up that knowledge, I think is really key here. And, there's lots of, so if you look back here quickly, you'll see that I've got lots of, examples which I would consider to be, very basic. So things like the secure score, reading an anniversary date. We've got the one which we spoke about before, which is, allowing staff to access the environment using conditional access. We've got the Dilbert and a number of others there. So again, just start off simple, build it up, solve simple problems first, and you'll build your knowledge along the way.
Fantastic. Really appreciate that, Robert. That was a great insight into the premium connectors and APIs to gather the data with and without authentication. Our second presentation today is from Yeoman, who's going to show us how to scrape data from websites using Power Automate Desktop. So I'm just going to hand over to Yeoman. Yeoman, are you available?
Yes, I'm available. Thanks for the intro, Andrew.
That's all right.
Ready to go.
Before you get started, I just want to make a special mention, and let me share my screen here, that Yeoman last night was recognised at some voluntary recognition awards and was nominated for his work in the Differentially Abled People Association. So congratulations on that, Yeoman, and I'm sure you had a fantastic night there last night.
I'm sure I did. I must have enjoyed it too much since I'm a little late this morning.
Indeed.
So yeah, no, it's work I do because my brother's autistic. So he's inspired us to set up an organization that helps other people similar to him. So I volunteer my time to help get that organization off the ground and provide all sorts of services and advocacy for people with disabilities. It's great work. It's a great movement.
Sensational, great stuff.
So on that note, I will try and help others with a particular problem that I ran into, and it's also a great way to show some more ways that we can use Power Automate Desktop. So if you remember from an earlier webinar, we actually demonstrated the ways that we would start working with this thing called Power Automate Desktop. And so you can use this particular Power Automate Desktop to work with things on your actual computer or computers, because as you know, Power Automate Desktop, when you create one of these links, one of these flows, actually synchronizes through to the cloud, through to any other device that you install and sign in on your Power Automate Desktop. So here we are on my PC here, and you can see Power Automate Desktop, and there's been actually a couple of changes as of in the last couple of days or so. There is actually now an examples tab. So there's actually examples on how to use some of the automations that you can get with Power Automate Desktop. So I haven't started exploring because it's a really recent update. It updated overnight, but I'm sure if you get into it, you can actually see that there's some examples of, look at that. Take a screenshot of a web page, open a web page, get metadata. And add to that is what we're going to do today, which is you can actually program without programming to what we call scrape information from a web page. How does it work? Oh, it's actually quite simple. Let's take a web page. Let's take someone who has got some data that we need to actually get some sort of information off. I know. What we'll do is we'll take a good friend, Robert. He's got a long-running blog series. I'm doing it for a long, long time. And on it, of course, you've got blog articles, a lot of them. But let's just say I wanted to create my own index of data from it. So what we can do is, let's just say maybe I want to take the heading and a link of each blog article on the site. Now I could just do the right mouse click thing, copy links, copy data, very tedious. And especially when you've got a long running blog series, as you can see from the archives, that goes back to 2007, right? Too hard to do manually. Let's see what Power Automate Desktop can do, and let's see the real power that Power Automate Desktop brings to this challenge. So what we can do is we can create a new flow, and what we can do is we'll just call it, I don't know, Robert's blog scrape. And so what we can do is once you edit it, which is what we're going to do, which is going to bring it up for me shortly, is we can start getting a few things ready. And one of the things that Power Automate Desktop can do, a simple task, is we can start piecing it together. So let's go into the browser automation. Let's just say we're going to use whatever browser we intend to use for this exercise. Let's just say Chrome. Okay. So I'm just going to drag that very simply here into here, and here to already ask you questions. So we want to launch a new instance. Yes, let's launch a new instance of Chrome. And the initial URL I'm going to grab is Robert's blog URL. So copy that, paste that. Everything else is normal. I don't have to do anything else. So that's the first part. Now, here is where some of the magic is going to be from Power Automate Desktop. Power Automate Desktop has a special mode called a recording mode. It's up here. So what it can actually do is, if you're familiar with Microsoft Word, especially for those aficionados, there was macros, which are basically little programs that you can do to work with things in, to shortcut things in Word. Well, they used to have a thing called a macro recorder, where it would actually watch, in quotation marks, watch you click on things and make some actions, and it'll actually track your actions and actually put it together as part of the macro. So this is a very similar thing with this recording mode. It will record the steps I do in whatever I'm doing, from when I'm going to open up the open up the Chrome to doing whatever. So I'm going to start the recording mode, of which it's going to start recording. And what I might do is I might just prepare my site in place because it's going to follow what steps I'm going to do. So when I press the record button, I'm going to push on the record button and it's going to start steps. So for instance, if I do, you can see it's changed into recording mode because it's actually highlighting each element. So what I'm going to do here is I am literally going to grab the title here. This is because it's analyzed the page point, so page elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the element. So in here, I can actually extract bits and pieces to do with just what is highlighted in the red. So I can get the text. So as you can see on the recorder, it's actually showing those steps and it's breaking it down. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to also extract the href or the URL that particular blog article is. So as you can see, it's changed that to extract data. Very simple. So what I can do is I can say that's it, that's all I want, but I actually want all my blog articles from this page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and repeat the same step on the next blog article, and this is why. So we're going to do this, same steps, extract the text, and then extract the href. And what you'll notice is when I can scroll down to the next article, it's in green already highlighted and assumed what I want it to do. That I want this particular stuff in green. Okay. So that's what's going to happen. Now, this is a very long blog, and like with most blog pages, it is over a series of pages, like from 1 to a gazillion pages. So what I can also do is I can highlight one of the buttons that is used to take me back to the next page, and in this case, older posts. So what I can do is this. I can actually set this element as a pager. And that identifies to Power Automate Desktop that I can keep clicking that button to so-called turn a page. That's what I assume it to be when I started playing with this. So what this does is, in a few steps I've recorded, I have identified what I wanted and what I wanted to collect, and how to go further on into the website in order to continue the scraping of that information right until the last page. And that's all I need to do. It looks like it's added something extra here. So what I'm going to do is you can edit the steps on the go. You can also pause the steps. So you don't have to, if you want to scroll to a point, you don't want it to capture me scrolling through my website or whatever, and it will actually pause recording until you're in position ready to do whatever you need to do next as a step. But this is a very simple two-step or three-step little recording that we've done, and now I've finished. So what it's done is added my recording to this Power Automate flow. Now, I don't need to do this step because I already added this step manually in the initial stage. The reason we do that is sometimes it's easier to set the tone with a manual step when it's coming to like launch a new page and go into blog.ciapps.com, because I don't want to have to record that step even though I had to. Because sometimes I've seen it go wrong. In the times that I've been testing, so I've seen this go a bit wrong. So I'd rather take some of the pain away from actually doing this step. And all I really wanted was the step that I didn't want to have to code, the step I didn't have to work out how to try and do by piecing together individual elements here, and the recording simply took care of it. All right. So this is where we've done so far. We've opened Chrome and we want to extract the data, but we need to know where to put this data. So we're going to add a few more steps. And one of the steps is, well, we're going to be really simplistic here. We could add it to something like an Excel file. So all we have to do is open our Excel portion of Power Automate Desktop. And what we want to do is literally save Excel. Actually, there's one step I missed. So what we can do is go back into here and edit the steps. So what we can do is edit that step, and what we want it to do is, this looks okay except for one thing. We want to, instead of store it into a variable, we want to store it in an Excel spreadsheet. I did forget that step. So what you can do is it's change the variable name to Excel instance, very nice and friendly name. So what we do is that before we go and actually save it into Excel. And here it's called Excel instance, which is the variable name we just saw. And all we do is save the document as whatever we want it to do. So we'll just follow this. We'll go back and chuck it on my desktop, I think, and we'll call it Robert's blog links. Okay. Or scrape or whatever you want to do. Anyway, so in here, and I'm saved. And that's the actual end of the flow that we've created that will basically go through this entire blog site and get from it the different blog articles, then their name, titles, and their URLs. So we should really watch this in action once I've saved it. If in doubt, like with everything you do with Word and Excel, save often. But because it's such a small flow, I've chosen that. Well, it's a very simple 3 steps or 4 steps. We'll now save it. And now we are ready to go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to close all my instances of Chrome, ready to go. Oh, that's just my Power Automate. And we're going to run the thing. So actually we can close that actually. Shouldn't have closed Power Automate. And there's the Power Automate ready to go. So let's watch this in action for a little bit. So what it's going to do is when I run it, we should actually we should actually see that it's opening Chrome and it's going to go to Robert's blog, and it's actually going to start moving through the entire site, picking up that information that we requested until the end of the site. And now you can see it in action. It's actually moving through. We'll watch it for a few seconds, but as you can see, it's going to go through, and it's probably going to go through to the next page, which is what we wanted. But as you can see, this is the idea. It's going to do it behind the scenes. We can minimize get the Power Automate to do its work. Because it's such an extensive site, it did take a while to do this on another run through yesterday. So what it's going to do, it's going to create that Excel file. And so as you can see, it's just going to keep moving. Now, it's really exciting, I'm sure, but what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the results while that's moving behind the scenes of what we've done earlier. So this is a run that I did through a bit earlier, just to show you this is what you're going to get. You're going to get an Excel file that literally shows what we wanted. Title of the blog post, URL of the blog post. And as you can see, there's so many articles that I'm scrolling through all of it. Easy as that. So in the space of 10 minutes, we can set up something that would go and grab information from a website or scraped it. So if there's not any questions, I can tell. I'm sure that this is very exciting for those who are looking to see that Power Automate Desktop can not only scrape data from any website, whatever information you want, and even those Power Automate examples show you that we can do all sorts of things, not just with websites, but with documents you get, with any other information that comes to your desktop and you want to start working with it. Instead of an Excel file, I could have done all of these links into a SharePoint list. I could have put it into another Power Automate just to use that data with something else. There's a lot of extensibility with these sorts of capabilities that Power Automate Desktop gives to us. I know that one that you can also do is you can grab invoices and properly plonk them somewhere. For instance, if you tell it to manually get it from your Outlook, for example. But I'm sure that you can think of many different applications now that you're saying there's capability for your own own solution.
So Yeoman, where Robert showed us how we could use APIs to connect to company data in, let's say, a SaaS CRM system, if there was a legacy system that had, and there was no sort of API availability to connect to the data, I could see how you could use this process that you've done to run through, let's say, a login into their site, go to a specific page, grab the data, and then save it as you did, either into Excel or into a SharePoint list or even into Dataverse, to then access the data. Would that be correct?
Yeah, if it's a legacy system that's only accessible through a desktop client, let's just say, I'm pretty sure that using those web, the Power Automate recorder, you can see what you can and can't do with the recorder. So it will follow you and actually do things like help you log in or actually identify information to work with, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I would experiment. I think just the power in that recorder in itself, as I've just shown you, means that anyone who's known macro recording also knows that there's so much power just by not having to code it yourself, just to actually basically literally follow your steps and see what you can do. Absolutely.
And you've got that recorder running on a cloud PC, so it's not, so if it sort of kicked off in the middle of the day, it wouldn't affect what you're doing on your local PC?
No, not whatsoever. So I could use this, and while that's running, I could go back into my my PC, kick up Power Automate Desktop, and start scraping another side. I could create more Power Automates as well. But the power of the recorder in itself, just to record the steps that you do, it blows me away when I started looking into this and how simple it you can do something that we used to have to, this sort of particular subject, this particular thing I've shown you, actually there was a particular software you could buy that you could actually do this with, but it costs you money. It's Power Automate Desktop. It comes with your Power Automate license, virtually free.
Fantastic, and pre-installed on Windows 11, and there's a download availability for Windows 10. Does anyone else out there have any questions for Yeoman?
How many articles did I write, Yeoman?
A lot.
I know that, but you've got the spreadsheet there. Come on.
I worked out that it was something close to over 3,000 articles, right?
So that's right. Yeah, that's right. No, that's the right number. Yeah, that's correct. That's impressive. I like it.
That's a lot of articles, Robert. Well done. Now, let's me take over the screen again. And I'm, now it's question time. Questions from the floor. Any questions that people out there may have? I know that we've got Microsoft Build coming up. There's plenty of Power Platform sessions in Microsoft Build. And I know Yeoman was going to talk about a couple. If you're still there, Yeoman.
I'm still here. What was I going to talk about? Sorry.
About Microsoft Build and the Power Platform sessions.
So that was my news from before. So yes, Microsoft Build is coming up next week, and so for those of us in Power Platform world, there is a set of showing on screen is there is a Power Platform focused sessions. So there is a article that you'll get in the notes. In basically, you can go through Microsoft Build and you can attend all the different sessions. But what you can do, as Andrew's shown on the screen there, is you can actually refine them to by using the filter on the left to actually just highlight all the Power Platform ones. Now, you don't necessarily have to be a Power Platform and aficionado to get really into what Build's doing. I mean, it's really nice because Build is more for developers, but because we're low code, no code people, there are some experiences I think people should get into. I know I'm going to attend and have a look at some of these sessions. They will be on demand for those of us in Australia. I think it's a little bit of a stretch to stay up all night watching these things, but the idea here is, as you can see, a lot of these are on demand. So you can actually register for Microsoft Build, go to these sessions, or at least save them to your backpack, just so that you can get a hold of these sessions after they've been done and replay them so that you can see some of the power that you can work with Power Automate. And so some of them, they were in different levels, so beginner, intermediate, and expert. But to be honest, I think if you're of a curious mind, I think there's nothing stopping you going to and grabbing as many sessions as possible to go see, so that you can actually start thinking more what you can do with Power Platform. And the other thing, if you do stay up, is you can register for some of the sessions where you can meet the experts. So you could interact with some of the Microsoft team that actually works with Power Platform, have conversations, introduce yourself, and start networking as well with your experience. It never hurts to have someone that you know at Microsoft or even any of the other Power Platform aficionados to expand your mind and expand your network of delving into the Power Platform world.
Absolutely. And I know Bill, yourself, and myself intend to watch all of the Power Platform episodes that are going to be at Microsoft Build, and stay tuned for future webinars where we'll discuss and each of the topics and what's coming, what's new, what's old, and what we can develop with. So lastly, I'm just going to put up our resources. Here are some useful links that we feel will help you in your Power Platform journey. Firstly, we've got our user group that Bill has already talked about. It's slowly growing in numbers, and if you haven't already joined, we'd love to see you there. We're followed by specific Microsoft Learn resources. Once again, if you do the Learn, you then can qualify in for exam vouchers. Don't forget, all of our webinars are recorded and on our community YouTube website. And we've also, lastly, the Microsoft Training Days, great form of training for the beginner. And that's it for today. I'd love it if you could hang around for our virtual cup of tea. That won't be recorded. That's just a get together where we can talk about anything and everything. Today's webinar is proudly presented by our Power Platform Community User Group. You can join the user group with that URL or the QR code on the screen. Thanks again, and have a great day.